In this lesson, we will talk about the topics that we will cover during this course. In the first chapter, we will talk about the course content and checkpoint certificates. In the second chapter, we will cover the installation and basic settings. We have a total of 5 lessons in this chapter. In our first lesson, we will talk about our sample topology. In our second lesson, we will install the management server, and in our third lesson, we will install the firewall. After installing the firewall, we will add this firewall to our management server in our fourth lesson. In our last lesson, I will talk about home lab topology on VMware Workstation. In the third chapter, we have 4 lessons in total. In our first lesson, we will introduce security policies. In our second lesson, we will make a zone policy example. In our third lesson, we will make an example of time-based policies. In our last lesson, we will cover the topics of section and inline. In our fourth chapter, we will deal with network address translations. In this section, we have 3 lessons in total. Source NAT in our first lesson, destination NAT in our second lesson. In our last lesson, we will cover manual NAT topics. In the fifth chapter, we will talk about advanced features in firewall. Here, we have 8 lessons in total. Let's take a look at these lessons. In our first lesson, we will talk about checkpoint features and software blades. In our second lesson, there is the subject of HTTPS inspection. In our third lesson, there is URL filtering. In our fourth lesson, there is the topic of application control. In our fifth lesson, there is anti-spoofing. In our sixth lesson, there is the addition of remote firewall. In our seventh lesson, there is a multiplex. We will cover policy creation and how to make high availability and checkpoint in our last lesson. In chapter 6, we will cover authentication. In our first lesson, I will show you how to add and lit up server. In our second lesson, we will enable the identity awareness software blade and perform user control over the captive portal. In our third lesson, I will show you how to perform user control using agent software. In our last lesson, we will cover managing user access. In the 7th chapter, there is the topic of VPN. In our first lesson, we will give an overview of VPN. In our second lesson, we will make a lab example for IPsec site-to-site VPN. And in our last lesson, we will finish our lesson by looking at the tunnel details of these VPN connections using the SmartView program. When we come to the last chapter, we will cover the command line interface topics in our last chapter. In our first lesson, I will show you how to configure the interface using command line interface. In our second lesson, I will explain how to change the secure internal communication password using the CLI and how to remove a policy packet. In our third lesson, I will show you how to change the web user interface port. In our last lesson, we will finish our training by covering the subjects of backup and restore. See you in our next lesson. Bye.